Hey guys, how are you doing? This is Simon from BizLearn. Hi and welcome to the second part of the new tutorial series, the impossible pattern. This is also going to be the last video concerning the topic. In the last video, the first video I have uploaded a few days ago, I have showed you how to create this type of pattern where we had to use flattening and forming in order to somehow bend the curves which you see here, which is not possible by just using a, for example, feature pattern. Of course, there are some commands in order to somehow deform geometry by use of reference surfaces like this one. There would be a possibility. Anyway, I was demonstrating you this type of strategy because it can be adopted to other use cases that allow you to use the flattening and forming, for example, or these types of relations which I'm creating within here, because those are based on the horizontal modeling techniques which I'm demonstrating on my YouTube channel. So this is what you can adopt even if you're not creating such sort of geometry directly. When you have a look at the original file, which is displayed here, you can see that there are some slots within the shape and following the pattern exactly. And therefore, this is what I'm going to show you today. Therefore, we need to start with a law extension, which is pretty simple. And you can do all the faces within one step. But you have to make sure that edges maintain, because those are going to be used as a reference for the edge blend. In order to create the slots, I have created a line, which you see here, starting from the point which we have initially created to define the start point of our sketch. Then followed by a tube, an edge blend, then followed by a feature pattern, which of course required some kind of complexity and some specific settings. Now it's subtracted and now a solid body is defined. And this construction is completely update stable. You can modify your user expressions easily. You can modify the guiding curves, which is based on the extrude, which is here, without any problems. Let's go ahead, let's proceed. The construction of the impossible pattern. First of all, I'm just gonna hide these things which I don't need. I'm gonna draw a line. And honestly, I need to look at this line. It is a 3D object, so it's not sketch based. The reason I am using the line instead of sketch is that the positioning is much easier. There is no real plane which I wanted to use, but the main reason I am doing this is that, just imagine we are creating a feature pattern afterwards and we somehow need to create a relation from the line to this surface, because the pattern needs to follow this bent surface which you see here, which is curved. And that's the reason why I can hardly, maybe I can use a sketch, but it's hard to define a relation to this surface which can be reused. That's the problem, it needs to be reused, the relation. So in order to create this line, I have of course defined a start point. I have defined values as usual. And here you can see as an end option, as a direction, I have created a reference, a relation to this surface by use of the normal option. There is no support plane or something like that required as compared to a sketch. That's what I'm going to do now. I'm going to open the state of the impossible pattern that I have created lastly. And if you haven't seen the last video, you should watch this before creating this, of course, because it's hard to catch up here. I recommend you to watch the first video first and then proceed with this one. Now I'm going to start the construction. We need a curve, which I can find below curve. It's a line which we need. And the first point is gonna be invert, and I can directly select this point. There is even no selection within the graphics area required. As a second option, I need the normal option, and now I can create a relation to the surface. You can see there is a filter, tangent faces, feature faces, etc., which is available. So I could now directly select the extrude number 6 upon here. There's no requirement of selecting within the graphics area. You can work without any graphics, like a computer program which has no eyes, which is just creating relations by combining objects directly. Let's go ahead here. We need to define a limitation, -5. 10, I guess it's a little bit short. Well, I'll leave it as it is. It's okay. I'm gonna apply this. And here is my, well, tiny line, which I'm maybe gonna increase later. I'm gonna create, well, I could now define whatever, the tube, etc., work some details out, but I forgot to create the law extension and edge blend. So I should have done this maybe first of all, but there is no relation to the line, so it's not a problem. Let's go ahead with the law extension now below surface. This is one of the frequently used commands in my use cases. I use this a lot in order to create flanges, for example, or support surfaces. And I'm not gonna give you a detailed explanation now. I've just reset the command and I'm gonna select my curves. So the curves which I have to select are the, well, flattening and forming curves. You can see flattening and forming is a curve feature. The relation here while right click is feature curves. That's pretty cool. As a face, I'm also going to select the extrude number 6. And, well, the shape here is very similar of extrude number 2 and edge blend, but it's multiple segments, which we don't have here. This is just one segment, which is, of course, an advantage. And there are some settings I'd like to do. As you can see, by default, this command, law extension, is creating corners, which is very important. So there is no, if you zoom in, no mini radius upon here, as it would be in some other commands, like the swept, for example, which would create some mini radii and requires some specific setting in order to avoid that. But this one doesn't. We've got the side option here. It's one-sided. It should be symmetric or asymmetric. I'm going to be using asymmetric. And here you can see we can use the handle in order to define a length here. The value is 16 and this value is 10. I'm satisfied with this, and it's also the same on this side because it's constant. Alright. Let's go ahead. Is there a setting which we have to enable? I guess yes. You can see there are some gaps. Those are caused by the line, which you see here. As you remember the sketch starts somewhere here and ends here. And just because the line ends here and the next line starts here, this is our result. 2 faces unnecessarily. And that's why I'm gonna merge the faces if possible. Now those are merged and there's nothing else required. The curve don't need to be projected onto face because it already is. And I'm just gonna disable the option. Many people think it doesn't make a difference. I think it makes a difference because this projection is gonna be calculated. Even if not necessary, it's still gonna be calculated. And of course, this causes performance loss. Alright, I'm just gonna finish this while a center mouse button click. Here is our law extension. And the next step is, which I'm directly gonna do, the edge blend creation. I should modify the value here. Even 5 millimeters is too high, so I'm gonna start with the value of 1 millimeter. And of course use a proper selection rule, which is body edges. and it's just one click on the law extension, I cannot select here because if it's body edges, you cannot select the feature. And there are no feature edges option within here. So graphic area has to be used in order to select. It's only one edge of the geometry, and every edge of the entire body is going to be selected. By the preview, you can see it's a very tiny radius, so I'm just going to increase the value. Maybe. Anyway, I'm going to be using 5 millimeters. I'm going to apply this. And I'm just going to move the line below the edge blend. I will create a tube next, which is related to the line. The tube you can find below surface. And I guess it's below, it's a basic feature, so it must be somewhere below more. Here it is, the tube. Fortunately, there's no preview button here, so you will always have to use show result in order to see the width. I'm just gonna increase this as well. I think 3 millimeter or maybe 5 millimeter is fine. I'm just gonna leave it 3. And I'm gonna create an edge blend next. And also here, I'm gonna be selecting body edges. Of course, 5 millimeters is too big, so it has to be 1.5 max. But if I modify the tube diameter, of course, the edge blend needs to be modified as well. And there is something you can do. You can create a relation between the parameter here and the parameter of tube. So I'm gonna reuse the width of the tube by using a reference feature parameter. And you just have to select the tube, and there is a limit 1 and limit 2. And by the preview here, it's hard to see. Now you can see that it's P71, which is 3 millimeters. But I don't actually know which one is limit 1 and 2. I forgot. I think it must be limit 1. And now you can see it's the proper value, but I have to modify this by using the formula option. It needs to be divided by 2. Center mouse button. Center mouse button again and again. And the blend is finished. You can see here, there is a constant relation to P71 coming from tube. Just gonna cancel this. All right, now we can start the pattern feature creation. But there's something we need to do first of all. A pattern feature includes a method which is called general and allows us to create a pattern from a point to points. But I haven't created the point yet. Of course, I've got the from point, which is this one. This is reused so often in this construction, so important point. You should not delete this. But I have no 2 points. Those have to be created. So what you can do is edit the pattern geometry. That's what I'm going to do. And add the point which you see here. So you can see we've got 3 objects included. I'm just going to add this point. Now it's 4 objects. And I'm just going to apply this. That's it. That's my modification. I have to make sure that flattening and forming is using the points. You can see by the preview after selecting it, it does. The points, which you can see here, can be reused by the pattern feature. And now I'm going to reset this first of all and select the feature to pattern, which is tube and edge blend. In order to select several features, you will have to use the Control or Shift button on the keyboard, otherwise the previous selection will be discarded. So I'm going to be using Shift, and now 2 features are selected. There is an alert, as you can see. Without reading this, the method right now is set to simple. And this one does not allow us to create complex patterns. So anyway, I have to use variational. Now you can see the alert is hidden. So don't worry about this. There are no reusable references within Tube and Edge Blend, and as I mentioned before, I'm just gonna try to create the pattern without using the line. Maybe it's required to use the line. Maybe it's also depending on the versions, because patterns are enhanced from version to version. Maybe I'm gonna reuse it. As you can see, when I select the line, there is a normal to object opportunity which we can reuse. So if the pattern is not working properly by just using Tube and Edge Blend, you can additionally use the line and reuse the reference, which is a reference to the face. Might be possible. Well, we can try that. There are other opportunities within the command like orientation follow face, which we can also use. But anyway, I'm just gonna try reusing the reference and see how far we can go. Layout general, of course. The from point, which I call it, is here. And my 2 points is flattening and forming. There is no single selection required within the graphics area. And the selection rule is always properly defined. Now let's have a look at the result. I'm just gonna select this again, show result. And you can see it's following straightforward. How simple is that? I mean, the only setting I had to do is reuse an object. Nothing else you have to do. So if I don't reuse it, it's still gonna be following. That's pretty cool. That's pretty nice. I'm not sure how flexible this is if I do modifications. I should trust in the software, I think. Even without reusing references, this is following the face. How huge is that? I mean, how cool is that? It's variational. If I use single, for example, there are some alerts, so maybe, no, it's not working. If I use simple, also here it's not working. Input is not properly defined. So we have to use variational, but it's not required to enable the normal to object option. And it's still working properly. Well, anyway, I have to discuss troubleshooting cases anyway, because the pattern I have created before, it was an older version of NX, was a little bit more user-defined. I did some orientation settings, etc. For example, if you do not select a line, let's have a look. That's somehow a typical behavior of the pattern command. If you do not select the line includes the relation to the surface. And even if you don't select the reuse method or reuse thing, the entry here, it's working properly. But if you don't select the line, it's not going to follow the face. So somehow, without enabling the reuse option here, it is following the face. Well, there is a reason. Usually when, for example, when you create a pattern which is referenced, I mean, which feature is a sketch, and the sketch includes a reusable object which you can select within here. Somehow a reference to an external object. It makes a difference. Because if you don't reuse, the sketch might look different. Just imagine a slot which height is defined by an edge of a surface which is not straight, which is maybe curved. And if you reuse this edge, the slot is still gonna follow the curve when being patterned, and the length thereby is different. If you don't reuse it, it's gonna be straightforward. But the line, the length of the line is defined differently. But the line cannot exist without the reference to this surface. And that's the reason why we are using pattern feature here, because each instance of the feature is still a feature. It's still driven by parameters. And one of the, it's not a parameter, but one of the settings within the line, meaning the relation to the surface because of the direction, is still there. So I think this would be the explanation why it's not required here to reuse the normal option. But anyway, if you have troubles, because if you have maybe defined the line differently, whatever, my hint is to enable this. It doesn't cause any problems. So anyway, it's working here without reusing because it's reused anyway. But there's something I would like to consider. This is the next possible problem that might be caused. If you, for example, work without the line. As you can see right now, this is somehow a pattern feature tutorial. If you're not using the line, how can we solve the pattern? How can we create the pattern? Because as you can see now, it's not well directed. The direction is parallel. Well, there is an opportunity below the orientation tab, which is called follow face. And right now, orientation is also set to same as input. It should be follow pattern. But anyway, this is not gonna work. So I will have to follow face because there is no reference within the tube that is reused. So what I'm gonna do now, I'm gonna follow face now. And this is very funny because it's gonna be complex now. I'm gonna select the face, which is my extrude. And I should follow the face normal, not the pattern plane normal, the face normal, which is different on each point of the face. And the face normal is always perpendicular. The tube itself is also perpendicular to the face at this position, so each tube shall be perpendicular to the face. Let me show you the result. As you can see, this is another opportunity in order to create this, but just have a look. Can you see this? I mean, if you don't have a straight and detailed look, it looks fine, but it's not. Here it is. Exactly center align, but in the curve, it's not. One of the reasons is the reference point. Because each time a pattern shall follow a face, the reference point needs to be aligning the face, but it's not. This one is aligning the face, but this one is somewhere else. The reference point, which is inferred by an X, is always in the center of the selected geometry. I mean the selected features upon here. This causes problems each time you are using follow face. So what I'm gonna do here, first of all, I'm gonna be using invert again. And I'm gonna create an associative relation now to this point, which has been reused several times already. I'm gonna show result. And let's see what's gonna happen. Just have a look. It looks good, first of all, and it also looks good from behind. Without measuring, this is the expected result. So it's also possible by not using line to create the pattern, by using the orientation tab, follow face, some settings required, along face normal, the reference point has to be suitable, we have to use variational, some requirements of course, and in terms of using a line additionally, there's no additional settings which have to be considered, but the line has to be created in a certain way. There needs to be a relation from line to this surface in order to be working properly. And that's one of the reasons why I was not creating a sketch. I mean, the sketch can be positioned on this surface. As you did see here, by using the datum coordinate system here, by using the datum axis, which are, the second one has a relation to the surface, as you might remember. If not, just have a look at the first video of this tutorial series, which I'm gonna link on the upper right of this video, as well as in the description and comments, etc. It's a must to see the first video in order to see how I've defined this. And to be honest, I was trying to create a sketch and reusing the sketch for the pattern. It's not possible. The reason is the relation to the surface when creating a sketch is not within the sketch itself. It is between coordinate system or axis to this surface, and unfortunately it cannot be reused. So it's not a 100% solution, reusable references, because not everything can be reused. You can reuse a relation between sketch and an edge, for example, by a specific constraint, but you cannot reuse a relation from an axis like this one to the surface. It's not working. I tried that before. You can try it as well. Trust me, it's not working. I gave this construction several tries until it was working properly. I remember I did a training just concerning the pattern feature command duration. It's only one command, which I was explaining in this training. Duration 4 hours. And I could even explain this within 8 hours because there are so many opportunities within the pattern feature that can be shown, so many use cases. Like this one is one use case, and different opportunities, different ways we can go. And as you did see, there are several solutions, and you have to pick the one that suits the best because it's strongly dependent on how things are related in the construction before. Anyway, let's finish this by creating some wall thickness. Let's create a subtraction first. I'm going to subtract from the law extension. I can also select law extension here. And I now have to use the center mouse button because this version of NX allows multiple targets for subtraction. So I'm going to use center mouse button and I'm going to select my tool. It's the tube. And of course, pattern feature. 25 objects. Have a look at the use expression. Number is 25. So 25 bodies are selected properly and subtracted from my target. I'm gonna fit this, and now it's time to create the expected thicken by use of surface, thicken, and I'm gonna create a relation to, well, a body. It's just one click on the body, and I should have considered the offset value before. It's, well, let's say -1 until 1, so it's somehow center aligned. I'm satisfied with this result. I'm not gonna show you how to clean this part up by using layers, etc. The only thing I'm gonna do, I have to do, is defining a different number in order to check my relation. I'm gonna be using, well, let's use 22 and see how far it goes. See if there's any repairing required. A recommendation from my side is to always check your variational use expressions during the construction and not in the end. And because if you find a mistake in an early moment, it will be easier to repair it, the construction. But in that case, it's working properly. There is an information which is telling me that number of tool bodies has changed, which is okay because it has changed. So I'm satisfied with my result. And the next thing you can try to do is, for example, edit the sketch from extrude number 2 in my case. Therefore, I mean, you can also create dimension, which I'm not going to do right now. Sketches shall always be fully defined, but I'm just going to replace a line by a curve and see whether this is working properly. And my expectation is that it does. Here we are. Also, this modification is working properly. Hopefully yours as well. Let me know if not. Let me know in the comments below what you think about this tutorial. I think I'm gonna upload more of those. I have a few use cases which I can demonstrate. I think this is also a pretty good opportunity to show you the horizontal modeling philosophy. Pattern feature is also included, very interesting, and of course flattening and forming, which might be new for you. Maybe you have a use case therefore. Maybe you have already collected some experience. Let me know in the comments below. I appreciate that. I'm looking forward to get in contact with you. Anyway, if you liked the video, use the like button if you want to be informed each time content is published on the BizLearn YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and enable the ring as well in order to be directly informed. Thank you for watching this video until the end. I appreciate that. I'm looking forward to your comments. Talk to you soon. Goodbye.